a podcast to honor the gods.
This better come with a sacrifice.
Deus Ex Media.
Content and Capable recognises the Indigenous people on the land of which we record this podcast on, the Bowendig people. We offer a respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Sovereignty was never ceded. Welcome to Content and Capable, the podcast that didn't realise that everything cost so much money and that every mattress seller is just trying to sell you a mattress. Doesn't matter what the quality is, they want $1,000 for it. My name's Sam. I am sleeping on what can only be described as a futon to non-Australians, but for the Australians in the room, it's a swag. And joining me today is the very worried at the moment, Adele. Hi, Adele. Welcome back.
Hi, a swag?
A swag. So historically, like a swag was like a bag you put all your belongings in while you traversed the country. And it was like used by jackaroos, which were basically traveling cattle herders. And because they would travel thousands of kilometers, moving cattle up and down the country, they would be camping all the time. So they had all their belongings in a canvas bag. And that slowly transformed into like a canvas bed that you roll up and can put on in the back of a car and sleep anywhere, basically, in the country. And the trick is you've got to have like two doonas and like they're really ratty doonas, like that really shouldn't be slept underneath in any other aspect other than camping. A pillow that's like questionably thin, not quite sure how it got that thin.
Yeah.
And I crossed the Simpson Desert in it as a 16-year-old. I've done like a couple of other camping trips in it, but it's always come with me. And then I moved into this house without a bed, and I have been umming and ahhing about mattresses because mattress salesmen really want to upsell you.
Yeah, they're crooks. They're crooks.
They are. They're terrible. I think there's a saying about mattress salesmen. I forget what it is. But, it was just one of those moments where I was like, well, and I've had the best sleep of the last month on this bed that I'm sitting in because it's the warmest part of the room because it's the middle of winter.
Yeah.
But how are you, Adele? How have you been? How's your summer been?
I'm good. Well, it's summer here. Summer in Canada. Yeah. Good. Yeah, busy summer. We've had a couple of heat waves. There's been some pretty bad wildfires in my province. Climate change,
Terrifying.
Natural disaster. Yeah. A historic town like burned down. But aside from that, it's going good. I'm actually just halfway through my work's music festival. So we've had like tonight is concert number 5 out of 10. So it runs for 2 weeks. So I'm kind of like in festival work mode, like really long days, but having a good time. So yeah, it's always nice to kind of end the summer with that event. But yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Good.
I love a concert festival. I love like putting on heaps of concerts. I don't know. There's something about being backstage and watching like a group of people perform and then just like hurriedly moving chairs. Or for me recently, it was like grabbing everyone's music and like sorting it like a madman trying to finish before midnight. Like, just like all of this like crazy, the admin work that goes on behind the scenes. And I just like, I've never been more energized about, like, I played in one performance and literally played the performance, came off the stage and started sorting music again. And it was just like so energizing to be like listening to this music, crying a little bit. There were some really lovely pieces that were being played. And there's just like, meanwhile going, where's Percussion 1's first page?
It's always Percussion 1 that you can't find.
It's ridiculous. My brother's a percussionist. I laid into him. I'm like, where did you put the percussion one page? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like,
yeah, the percussionists are never organized. I gotta be so real with you. Yeah, there's something so fun. It's like there's always the chaos of, and you know, whether this is like a music show or like theater or whatever, the chaos of like before show, during show, and then the feeling of like elation after show. And like I always loved like participating in it, but being behind the scenes is actually like I much prefer it now that I work in the industry. And like to work in the arts or to like volunteer or play in it or whatever, you always have to like wear a lot of hats. Like I never really know what's going to happen at a concert or an event. Like I always have my set list of duties. Like I work in marketing, so I'm always, you know, I'm like a front facing person. I always talk to people. I'm usually selling things or, you know, liaising with front of house. But like last night, there weren't enough front of house ushers, and there was this like massive humanity at one of the doors, like just a crush, and there was no usher. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm like an usher now. And I just like ran over and started handing out programs and trying to help people to their seats. And I was like, they were asking me questions, and I had to keep saying like, oh, I don't know. But yeah, there's always some sort of like unexpected thing, and it always ends up you know, really being fun. You have to really like learn to roll with the punches and just kind of be very flexible.
It's a lot of just like observing how someone does something once and then going, well, I'm going to do this now.
And I'm going to do it better.
Yeah. Which is someone who like learnt on the Suzuki method as a kid, which is very much by ear. It's great for me. The poor like my poor like fellow people who like struggle with like, you know, observing the intricacies and being able to repeat an action or music or something. I think it was the greatest part. You know, we do like one rehearsal and then we go and perform it the next night, and it'd be like, oh yeah, I know how this piece goes. And like 2 seconds into the piece, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I'm supposed to be playing, what my part sounds like. Or like there would be all of a sudden, you know, very specific for me, but like we were at a music camp and I was a staff member, and it's like, while I'm not required to tell children off, I am supposed to be that person who stands there and goes, I am a staff member. Don't do something, child, that, you know, in front of me. Exactly. It's great. But yes, so the concerts, I'm very curious now. Are they like, what kinds of concerts are you guys putting on?
Yeah, so every year we have a summer festival, and there's always a theme. I came up with this year's like slogan, which was kind of cool. But the theme of this year was like, we're taking all the music of J.S. Bach and kind of like putting a little twist on it.
So good.
Yeah. So I like, the festival is called Bach Untamed. It's like wild side a little bit. Yeah. So, you know, we've got everything from Bach being played on like the mandolin, to classical music, and, you know, some of Bach's works mixed with like Hindustani classical music and improvisation and such. Yeah, so that's really fun. It's always nice to present works that are, I don't know how to say, I don't know, that have like a modern twist on things, that they're a little bit more fun, that, you know, we're getting beyond kind of the stuffy, just here is, you know, Beethoven Symphony 9, and you're going to sit and you're going to listen, like putting a bit of a spin on it that reflects our more multicultural world, I think. Yeah.
100%. I think it's like so fun as well. Like, we know these pieces, especially some of the more famous classical works. You know, the general public even knows these pieces. We hear them all the time. So to hear them in a different way, in a different light, just makes a more pleasant, to be honest, listening experience. And it's so easy to forget that, like, you know, while not everyone is a musician, a lot of people grew up with music in their, you know, in their life in some way, shape or form. Yeah. And so, you know, it's very easy to go, oh, you know, these people haven't heard it because they're not musicians. And it's like, oh, actually, they probably have heard it. And they probably are sick to death of hearing Bach the same way 5 times in a row. You know, so it's lovely to be able to hear it in a different way, and I always am keen for that. The other thing I have recently become like mildly addicted to is like inspiring kids with like, I watch kids work with a composer to put pieces together and like develop a piece for performance. And, you know, it was just one of those moments where I was like, oh, this is what music making looks and sounds like. You know, we don't have to have a look at this and go, well, it must be interpreted this way because everyone has done it this way. And it's just amazing to hear and see people take their own interpretations and roll with it and really do well. Or like watch a conductor work with a composer to communicate the intended effect, but let everyone do it in their own way. It was just, amazing. There was many tears of joy and inspiration, which was really lovely.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the kids I teach also like compose as well. And it's just amazing hearing these like 14 to 16-year-old kids talk about like their own works that they've made and how excited they are, and they tell me about it, and it's just like really inspiring. Like I always find that I learn just as much from the kids I'm teaching as they're hopefully learning from me. Hopefully. Yeah.
I think it's inspiring to see a bunch of 14 to 16-year-olds speak so passionately about something you're also passionate.
Yeah.
I think there is that. I always joke with friends of mine that like I'm terrified of high schoolers because
me too.
They just seem too cool. But like to have someone nerd out on the same thing as you for like even 2 minutes, it's just like, oh wait, this is so cool, and I'm so glad that someone else gets why I'm obsessed with this. And it's really lovely.
Yeah, and not just like nerd out, but also like get them excited about things they didn't know before. Like a lot of what I teach, they don't know at first. I guess that's why I'm teaching them. I feel like wow, that's what teaching is. But
to see those connections, like the little bits and bobs, and then them connect the whole thing together, it's like, all the work's worth it.
Yeah. I just finished like, September to June was my first year of teaching. And definitely learned a lot. I was definitely really scared, not just because I'm scared of high schoolers and Generation Alpha is like insane. Their brains are insane. But just like so many rewarding moments, and like ending the year with like just so many comments from them that they just like enjoyed the class, and that I made what was, apparently previously a not as interesting course. I made it much more fun and interesting, like that's just what's so rewarding. And it made all the times that I got up at 6 a.m. to do my slides 3 hours before class. It sometimes hungover. It does make it all worth it. Really.
Were you teaching like high school music, or was this like a part of a conservatorium or a music group?
Yeah, so basically part of like a conservatory. So it's something called the Vancouver Academy of Music. And so in addition to my like 9-to-5 day job, every Saturday I was going into this private school that has this program for high school kids on the weekends. So basically they spend almost their whole Saturday there. They all play an instrument, or they compose or whatever, but they have multiple classes. So they have music history, music theory, orchestration, composition. They play in an ensemble, and they're there basically the whole day. And I'm like, you guys, first of all, high school is rough. Second of all, you're giving up your whole Saturday after already having 5 days straight of the hell that is high school to come and basically just have this like music intensive. And they have lessons and things, and they have to practice, and they all do concerts and such. It's just so impressive. So the kids who I'm teaching, majority of them are there because they want to be there and are there because, they're interested in music. A lot of them want to pursue it after school. If it finishes, at the university level. So it's a really interesting environment for sure.
I think it's especially fascinating, like high schoolers, because of all the things, as you were explaining what you were doing, I was like, oh wait, I did this program when I was in high school. I spent half of my Saturday at the local conservatorium, and we would have a class at 9 a.m, a music theory class, and then we'd only have one class and then rehearsal. But other people had other rehearsals and things, and I had a rehearsal on the Friday night at another ensemble that I was playing in. So I ended up having like 24 hours of like intense music making. But like, it's one of those things, as you say, like, as you said, you were surprised that, they turned around and said that you had made this class like really engaging. I think when you are in high school and you're choosing to lean in to music as an idea of a career or something that you want to do well and truly beyond high school and even sometimes university, it's really easy to turn them off. Like, I think there are so many boring aspects to music, like, and of course there are. It's like the medicine you take before you can do the cool music making stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, if you can make it interesting, of course, like, people will want to continue doing it and really enjoy, being a part of that class or, learning these, what usually would be the really hard and annoying. We were doing like chords and like chord formation, and it was just one of those things where we sat there and it's 9 o'clock in the morning. Most of us had left the house before 7 a.m. to be here in the city, and we were just like, this is ridiculous. We were just really, and this poor teacher was trying to make it engaging and interesting.
Yeah.
But there were some points where we had to sit down with a really dense piece of music and unpack these chords. And we're like, no,
well,
we don't want to do this.
It's funny you say that you had to start with theory, basically. So I always think that theory, like music theory, is basically like musical math. And I personally, I'm terrible at math. I was never good at music theory. And what I teach is music history. Like, I'm always primarily like a historian at heart. And so I had kids, 9:30 a.m. Got to teach them history, time to teach them music history. And I taught 2 classes. So the first one that I started the day with, I called Beethoven to Britney, because I basically was going from Beethoven's time up until the present, and I had complete control over my syllabus. Which was dangerous. So we started with like Beethoven, Moonlight Sonata back in September. And then we ended in June with, I introduced these high schoolers to Britney Spears' Hit Me Baby. Ooh. Yeah. So that's how I ended the course. But just finding ways to like make it engaging. And, one thing that I reiterated through both my classes and to the kids was the reason that we study history in like the reason, if you're going to be a musician, you have to take these music history classes and so many questions of, why do I have to learn these dates? Why do I have to learn this? Like, I'm just playing the piece, right? But the reason we're doing that is because if you learn the context of what was happening, when the piece was being composed, it brings such a richer understanding to your performance of the piece. And that was a really like novel concept for most of them. And instead of just like, okay, this composer was born in 1815 and then died, and that like just like those hard facts, I try to kind of go a bit deeper and find out what is the political situation, what is the what is the composer doing in his life, anything interesting in his family life, etc. And then also bringing to light a lot of like unknown composers or unknown or like lesser known, kind of ignored by the canon, so women composers, BIPOC composers, etc. So a lot of these kids like had no idea who some of these people were, and so it was really fun to introduce them to new music that was being composed at the same time as Schumann or Brahms or whatever, like pieces that they were playing. But so it's like it's interesting. History can either be really boring or it can be really interesting. I think we've all had history teachers that have been like super dull, and we've all had history teachers that like make it all a story. It's all storytelling, right? And so that's kind of what I tried to bring in my first year, and it ended up being very rewarding, and I think held their interest more than I expected.
I think it's also, as you said, like, it's very easy to walk into a music history class with, like, preconceived notions as to what to expect out of that class.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, I think. Like, I look at some of the, like, history content I consume now as an adult, and I go, my problem wasn't with history as a subject. My problem was the way it was told to me, or how it was communicated to me.
Exactly.
It's like, of all things, I was listening to a podcast about Victor Hugo, and obviously famous for writing Les Mis, but also famous for doing a whole bunch of other things. And so, hearing this story about, Victor Hugo and the way he, provoked Napoleon, and it just like the back and forth that he had, and the larger than life lifestyle he led. It just was one of those things where I was like, this is an insanely funny person that you could probably learn about the French Revolution through like the lens of. And it would be so much more engaging to hear about it than this battle was on this day and this battle was on this day.
Yeah, history too often falls into just like retelling facts rather than telling like human stories. Like history works best when it's from a relatable standpoint. We're all humans. There's something we can relate to in every kind of like human journey, every human story. So instead of just, this battle happened on this day, as soon as you link it into, if we have a protagonist in the story, like a main character that we can follow, whose life is interesting, then especially when you're trying to get the attention of teenagers, it's a lot easier to relate to. And also, what I tried to do in my classes was give them a lot of agency. I remembered being in high school and just like feeling very like everyone was telling me what to do. I didn't really have a lot of say in what I was learning, or kind of trust in, detailing anything when it comes to education, right? Everything's kind of decided for you. So I made the syllabus with the kids in September. I asked them what they wanted to learn about and kind of incorporated some of those ideas into the syllabus. And then they could all pick their own research topics, which was awesome. It was super rewarding. That they were all researching something they were actually interested in, rather than I was just telling them what to look up. So I don't know. I feel like too often we don't trust teenagers. I think.
100%.
Yeah, we don't don't give them enough credit, I think, in their own choices.
No, not at all. I think that as well is that like their natural curiosity is often, and this is the thing, I think I was thinking just before, is, these kids are giving up their, when you give up your Saturday, you want to be doing something you actually want to do.
Exactly.
There's no point telling them you have to do it this way and do it, like the way it's always been done. But also, I look at the teenagers in my life. I look at when I was a teenager, and the ingenuity and the thought and the the focus and the attention that were there when they were passionate about what they were doing, it was amazing to watch. I still look back at my teenage self and go, I have no idea how I did all of what I did in those, 6 or 7 years that I was in high school, because I did a lot. Like, there was a lot of things that I did and got up to, and I can't believe, I was running around doing all sorts of this stuff, and I can't believe I had the capacity to do that. I almost don't have the capacity to work, a breakfast radio shift and come home and be a productive human after work sometimes. Admittedly, it's the middle of winter. The seasonal depression has hit quite hard. But, at the same time, it's like one of those things where it's very easy to forget that teenagers are very, very active and very, very smart. Like, they're very good at making these connections. You've just got to guide them in the right direction.
Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility because they're very impressionable and they're very trusting. But they have this natural curiosity, and it's I don't know, with we're seeing right now, like, in the world, teachers are getting underfunded, programs are getting cut, whether it's from the arts to STEM or et cetera, and there's more and more of a barrier between, like, what neighborhood you live in, how much money your family has, and the education that your child gets. And I think that's an important factor in the conversation when we talk about, like, high school education, et cetera. Like, the place that I teach is a private institution, and these, like, tuition is quite expensive, and there's a lot of barriers to just, like, anyone kind of receiving this education. And it's just, that's also important to talk about when we're talking about, like, teenagers, like, their curiosity, their interest, fostering all of that, because it's impossible to fulfill all those needs when, underfunded, whether it's in North America or Australia or Europe or wherever.
And I think, the way that we as a society have gone around valuing aspects of our education has always been a problem. I think we look at arts education as a whole, and it's consistently undervalued for its contribution to society. I didn't really want to say the word society, but, our arts have a massive contribution to our society, and if we aren't teaching the arts in a way that people are going to really learn from, then of course we're going to really lose out, and really, really struggle to find a way for people to continue creating great art. But it's not just arts, it's STEM, it's humanities, it's all of this that if we don't value it in a certain way. And I think also what I have found, some of the conversations I've had, even with my parents, which has been a bit of a scary notion, is that, like, a lot of it comes down to, admittedly, my parents pay private tuition for their children to go to school, and they go to a private school, and we're really lucky in that aspect. But Dad's like, we've got to get our money's worth. I was like, okay, but define money's worth, and are you in this for the long run? Like, and I've watched them change and realize that sometimes the fighting isn't the best way to go. Sometimes it's the, trust the teachers to know what they're doing and support them in that way, and go, how can we best support the teacher in their long-term goal rather than the short-term results that we seem to be always so focused on. And I think we live in this really interesting time where so much of our arts and humanities are being devalued. We look not even just, funding dollar-wise, but societally, we look at book bans, and they're not just happening in, the US, they're happening all across the world. Here in Australia, we hear about them all the time. And it is a devaluing of the trust that, you know, in arts to be able to educate and give value to people that you may not see immediately. Not all art is supposed to be consumed at its face value. Art is supposed to make you think. Humanities and our history is supposed to make us think. And if we're sticking, as we were talking about before, to straight cold facts, no one wants to listen to straight cold facts, and no one is going to learn anything from straight cold facts.
Yeah, it's you know, last time I was on, I was talking about making classical music accessible, and I think that speaks to just the arts in general. So many people are just like, oh, I don't understand it, you know, brushing off, like it's some sort of, I don't know, other world. You need some sort of special training to understand art. I don't know. It's a tough conversation to have, and I think it's one that's been happening for quite a few years now. Not just the decline of, you know, like education and funding for the arts, but also like the average person consumes less of like what we'll call, I don't want to call it, some people call it high art, and I don't really like that, but let's say like performance art, like the ballet, the symphony, the art gallery, et cetera, because people are consuming art every day in their lives, whether it's, you know, you're watching a Netflix show or reading a book. But in terms of classical music and performance art, no one really has an answer to how to make it more accessible, better funded. And, you know, I'm talking about how, like, exciting it is that these kids are so interested in it, you know, that I teach, and, you know, they want to go on and study it, but they have access to it, like, through this private institution. Yeah. Right? So, like, it's already, like, there's so many barriers there, and I have to keep that in mind every time I talk about it.
Yeah. And I think that's, like, the scary part. Often, you know, and I think of all things, you know, I think the last year and a half of me living in country Australia has really highlighted it. You know, Australia has a really strong performance art history. We've you know, a really strong brass band tradition. We've got a really strong town band traditions. And you sit down, you know, you sit down in the town band and you look around, and the people who are consuming the performance art in town are the people who are also performing the performance art. And it's this almost like self-fulfilling cycle, but that's exactly not the way we want it to be. We want, you know, the whole town to be able to consume this performance art. There's even a conversation around, you know, paying people fairly for their time and their efforts as well. I won't get into the specifics, but, you know, there are authorities around the country that have gone to go and look at the balance sheet of, you know, a performing event, you know, for example, a Christmas parade or something, and all of a sudden they're like, why is everyone being paid $500 for their attendance? And it's like, well, how else do you expect them to attend? You know, it's hard to, you know, put in this effort to go and do this. There's got to be some sort of reward, and we exist under capitalism. We need to be paid money, and it's just like, for so many people, they look at that and go, well, why can't it be free? Or why can't, and it's like that we are trying to make it as accessible as possible, lowering that barrier for entry, whether it is free public concerts, whether it is discounted tickets, whether it is, you know, lowering the costs that we operate under, so that, you know, the cost to produce the performance art is as low as possible, especially in places where, you know, socioeconomically, there's not a lot of spare money to be at, and we're going through a worldwide cost of living crisis, I think, and, you know, a lot of that discretionary spending goes away. But as you said, we're still consuming art, we're still reading books and watching movies and listening to music. and it's really hard to answer that question of, what should performance art be doing to be enticing these people back to the theatres and back to, the concert halls to consume this art that is actually so valuable and, is a time capsule or represents how someone's feeling, and we just don't think about it that much.
Yeah, as someone who works in marketing, like these questions are something I have to ask myself like all the time, right? Like my responsibility is to market classical music concerts to the city that I live in and hit a certain sales number, hit a certain number of audience attendees, because that's, not only how you make money as an organization, but also how you kind of ensure longevity by having like an audience, right? It's all about how do you have your audience? How do you entice your audience? And it's interesting, 50 years ago, you would call up the symphony, you would get your subscription, your membership, whatever, and you'd go to the symphony concerts, X amount of times per year. And like that would be like that's just what you did, and that was like some of your social outings. And it's interesting, the culture has completely changed just in terms of like how consumers like interact with subscriptions. They want flexibility, et cetera, et cetera. I'm totally going into like some arts marketing stuff there, but not enough organizations are flexible, I think, with that. And it's been like a tough lesson for classical music to learn, especially about just like the subscription economy. And there's honestly, like, I'll be very, very frank. There's a lot of doom and gloom in the industry. People are always saying, is classical music dying? Oh, our audience is never going to come back to classical music, Multiple major companies are closing and budget cuts and all of that. So the conversation is often very like negative and doom and gloom. And that is very frustrating to me, like as a young professional in it and also as like an educator. Because it's not dying. It's like, I know so many grassroots organizations, companies that are putting on like diverse shows, like great audience engagement. I think it's a certain type of professional working in the industry that prioritizes a certain type of music who is saying that classical music is dying.
It's also the people who don't engage with classical music that I find also say that classical music is dying. Mm-hmm. It was the same thing when I told my family I was studying to become a journalist. It was like, well, isn't journalism dying? I'm like, well, I don't see you reading the newspaper, so you're not really helping. I think it's so easy for the public to point blame and go, oh, classical music's dying. I just can't, it's just such a shame. And it's like, we have ways of being able to stop this from happening. I have to keep reminding myself from time to time that it's actually not that hard to buy a ticket to a concert and go. Like, it's my Friday night. I don't have any responsibilities on a Saturday morning. I can go out and go and watch a classical concert and enjoy the music. And when I do, I always come back with so much more energy and always really appreciated that I went and did it. It's that barrier to buying the ticket or just that little step to go, let's just go and do this. And sometimes, we're very time poor society nowadays. It's like, oh, I don't have time to sit for 2 hours. I'm like, you have time to sit for 3 hours on your phone scrolling TikTok. I get that, like, that's a different kind of stimulation, but like sometimes it's like good to remind yourself that you can sit for 2 hours and listen to classical music, or go and watch a theatre show, or go and watch the ballet. And there are so many, as you said, there are so many people out there doing such great work, whether it's arts in the park or, other outdoor events, especially in the summer, where, there's a lot more families and kids who would be incidentally, around and be able to take advantage of the fact that there is really fun things going on. And I think, as you said, it's not dying, it's changing, and we need to acknowledge that and adapt with those changes.
Yeah, I think we can talk until the cows come home about like the value of arts and classical music, but someone who isn't, raised in it, and it's important to, point out that you and I have both studied it. We know it like the back of our hand, and we're like intimately familiar with this world. But someone outside of it, they're not going to value it simply because we say they should. They have to experience it and come to value it on their own and on their own terms. And that doesn't mean picking them up and just like dunking them in immediately into, Schumann's Third Symphony at the Symphony Orchestra for the first time, where they sit for 2.5 hours. I kind of see it as a pathway. It's interesting. I was at a conference for arts professionals the other month, actually, and someone was, the speaker was talking about the candlelight concerts. Are those the thing in Australia?
Yeah, they are. They're
Yeah.
advertised so massively.
Yeah. So they were talking about these candlelight concerts, and okay, for those who don't know, it's like you go to a concert. Usually, it's a string quartet, and it's all lit up by these little like fake candles, not real candles, just because that's a fire hazard. And it could be any venue like near you, or kind of worldwide. And the programs are anything from like, the music of ABBA played on the string quartet to there was one that was the Beatles. There was one that was Coldplay I saw. But anyway, so I went and I saw, I got tickets as a Christmas gift from a family member. So I went and saw like the music of ABBA, I think back in January. I had a great time, personally. Very fun. And this is me who like knows string quartets quite well. Like I'm familiar with these instruments, et cetera, et cetera. It was actually at a venue that my own organization puts on concerts. And the place was packed, all ages. But anyway, so I've been there. I know what that experience is like. And then this presenter at this conference I was at was speaking of them, just like, those candlelight concerts, like, that's not real classical music. And then everyone in the room laughed. And I was like, those are like the middle ground. Things like that. Or, come to the symphony orchestra and hear Jurassic Park played in concert and watch the film alongside. I love those. I go to those. Those are like the kind of, the middle ground in my mind from getting your average person who isn't like us, who didn't grow up, didn't grow up with grandparents who played Beethoven on the radio or grew up with piano lessons or whatever, to get to the place that, the space that we are, where we're saying, value this art. And I think too often industry professionals disparage that middle ground and that middle step, and they expect, the individual to just like make the leap. Like, you're not gonna, like, it's very rare that you make like an opera lover overnight after they like decide to take the plunge, spend X amount of money for an opera ticket, go see people singing in Italian for 2.5 hours, and then go, I loved this, I'm gonna donate and watch this for the rest of my life. Like, there's a pathway. And I think that's really important. So when we're talking about, people don't value it, blah, 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 they just need to come and experience it and sit and listen. It's a lot more complicated than that. And I think it's like the industry itself as a whole needs to cultivate that pathway, cultivate that journey.
I think it's also, it becomes a very snobby marketing thing. You work in marketing. I have, of all things, I've got a marketing degree, and I have done my fair share of it in the past. But when you are customer facing, you realize where those steps are. You know, you can make the leap, but you can make those steps up to to something. And I think it's so easy to go, well, why aren't they making the leap? You know, it's like, oh, you know, why aren't they a full believer in this, or why aren't they, you know, going every week to this or something? We see it all the time in radio. You know, everyone goes, oh, radio's dying. And it's like, well, no. You listen to radio way more than you think you do, and sometimes it's just those little steps, and we're always talking about those little steps in radio. How can we hook you in so that right before the 7 o'clock news, you will be happy to listen for the next 10 minutes, but then keep listening to be able to hear what's coming up next. And I think we do this so well in TV advertising. We do this so well in you know, visual advertising of like, how do we lead someone on to the next page? But we've struggled with it, you know, in other less visual aspects. Audio is really a hard one, I think, to really hook people in. I found working on this podcast, it's been, you know, really hard to convince people to, you know, continue listening all the time. When I go through those statistics and I look at
the drop-off point.
Stuff,
Yep. I know all about the drop-off point.
And it's like, oh, okay, so this is the point. So they're not really listening to this aspect of the show. Okay, well, you know, what should I be doing to fix and change that? We have the same with radio. You know, there's always drop-off points, but there's always peaks as well of people tuning in, you know, and we've got to be really conscious that, especially something like radio, our audience is really dynamic. And I think it's so easy for a musician who doesn't sit in that customer-facing role, who doesn't hear the challenges or hasn't ever experienced those challenges to accessing classical music, go, oh, you know, I can't believe that they're doing this. And I think it's interesting to watch music teachers as compared to professional musicians, because they've got such a different attitude to this, where and I, you know, have got to know quite a few music teachers. A lot of their attitude is this a fun romp? Are we enjoying ourselves? You know, and the focus more on, are we enjoying ourselves? There's an aspect where they turn the professionalism on. It's like, well, we have to challenge, you know, ourselves. But some of the concerts I played in with these staff members, with these music teachers, they all we weren't playing this music because we wanted to show off. We were playing this music because it was fun and we thought the kids would love it. Not because it's like some, you know, I have to show off the best I can. And I think that that's some of the aspect that professional musicians forget about, is that you get to this high echelon, you're doing such amazing work, and I shouldn't ever discredit, you know, a professional musician for the amazing work that they do as a musician, but at the same time, we've got to step people up, and sometimes you've got to play that fun romp of ABBA music to convince people that classical music still has value, and you can go and seek out more of those concerts. I think then, you know, there are some organisations that do a really good job. They do those movie concerts and stuff, and then more and more people come to them more regularly, and then they're starting to go to the regular concerts, and that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, it's also important to remember that, like, you can look at statistics and look at peak times. You know, I do a lot of that when I'm doing. We post a lot of digital, like, musical content and such. But consumers will always surprise you. Like, you can never completely accurately predict customer behavior. And also, like, attention spans as well. Like, we're in an age of, like, very limited attention spans, and adapting to that as well. And I find that so much of classical music is dominated by, let's call them, like, the old guard. Who just doesn't understand this, and you know, kind of disparages what all, you know, the stepping point of, you know, whether it's these film concerts or whatever And I think until we can convince industry professionals to kind of change their approaches, we're going to continue alienating new audiences and kind of falling behind. Yeah, I mean, I feel like if I was ever to write a book, I would title it Music is Dying and It's a Good Thing. But
and I think that's the other thing. I think it's also a bit of a mindset thing. You know, the industry isn't... And I think this is the thing, is that you work in music education, you also work in music marketing. You're, you know, basically seeing both ends of music consumers. I don't think it's dying. Otherwise, we'd all be out of jobs. There'd be no town bands and stuff. It's the same way that people turn around and say journalism's dying. It's like, no, well, these newspapers still exist. It's not dying, it's changing. And I think sometimes when we say dying, I think that it's it almost feels like self-victimization of like, oh, you know, the world's ending, you know, and it almost gives up before we even start thinking about how can we make it more accessible? How can we platform more diverse musicians? How can we platform more diverse composers? How do we represent different styles of music, different ethnicities, you know, all sorts of things that would make this music more accessible?
Yeah, exactly. Like classical music as its definition of, you know, white dominated, predominantly male, predominantly up until like 1940, for the privileged, you know, if it's by that definition, that's why I would say classical music is dying and it's a good thing. It's changing, it's evolving, it's going beyond, I think, the very like narrowed scope of like the definition. Like it's impossible for me to say classical, like with a straight face, classical music is dying, and also teach these kids who are so passionate and so excited and who are literally composing their own works. Like, yeah, I'm like, it can't be dying. I'm seeing it flourish right in front of me. My job is to market it. And, you know, my organization had a 47% audience increase in 2023 to 2024. So it's impossible for me to like say with a straight face that it's dying. I think the whole definition of it is dying, and I do think that's a good thing.
100%.
Yeah.
I think that's what I got to title the episode, to be honest, at this point. Classical music is dying, and it's a good thing, because
I love that.
It's just like, it is so great. And I think this is where, of all things, I had a friend of mine come and visit Vancouver last year, of all things, for a music therapy conference that her mother was at. And she was sending me photos, and she was just talking about what she'd been up to and where she visited. And I remember as a kid being in Vancouver, and we were only there for a few days, but like we were there and we watched an ice hockey game. We went to...
That's so Canadian. I love it.
Yeah, I think we did like a couple of things, but like we left pretty quickly. And Mum and Dad were like, oh, you know, Vancouver wasn't that great. And like that's kind of like stuck in their mind. But when my friend was sending these photos, I just like was like, this reminds me of the Australian city of Melbourne in the summer as well, where it's this really vibrant, and I think, you know, there are cities across the world, I would consider, you know, places like Vancouver, Melbourne, to an extent, you know, there's probably equivalents in the US, but, you know, even
San
places...
Fran, Seattle.
Yeah, where there are so many people doing such great things and creating a really vibrant city. And part of that is having an art scene that is really accessible and is really interesting. And to be able to see that you know, that there is work in that direction is just amazing. It's just one of those things where it's made me really excited to come back to Vancouver. It's made me really, you know, not to reveal too much of my travel plans, but like there are now places in the world where I look at it and I go, this place reminds, like, it gives me the vibe that this is going to be amazing. And we are slowly transforming some of our cities into really vibrant places. And that has to be done on all aspects. It's got to be done on a very structural, nerdy level. But it also, the arts plays a role in this. Having a vibrant art scene, having people who embrace the arts, business owners who embrace the arts, locals who love it, city councils who really want to, encourage it more to happen, then our art scene is going to get better and better and more interesting.
Yeah. Vancouver is a great city. It's been awesome seeing what's happening here. I think, the biggest trouble is this old guard, and not in the sense that, we should get rid of them. It's really just like a mindset. We should get rid of them. It's a mindset shift, and, there's such a value placed on the art itself, and it's held to some sort of like elevated status. Like, even just saying the art, I'm like, ugh, like I'm like, why am I saying that? But the art TM, but it's sacred, it's untouchable, it should, you're supposed to sit in the symphony and your soul is supposed to be like transfixed, and music is the universal language, and music cures all ills. And I'm like, that's great, but also these are businesses, performing arts. If we focus too much on this idea of the art as this untouchable kind of over our heads thing, it alienates audiences, and it actually harms our business practices to survive. So it's a lot of times too many companies or businesses or organizations in the industry are shooting themselves in the foot by... There needs to be a fine balance. Like, I'm not saying, suddenly
I look at
the music we perform doesn't matter or anything like that.
No, 100%. I look at the way the UK kind of approaches it, and I look at it and I go, the whole concept of the Poms in summer, I think, is a really great idea. It's the same with fringe festivals. I think, these are really great things that lower that jump in accessibility, and we as business, we can use that to really convince people that it is worth it to come to this hoity-toity classical concert. I use and I think my life as a musician, I know what I'm expecting, but often I've had people turn around and ask me, what should we be be dressing up in a certain way? Like, all of this anxiety, and there's creators online that do such a great job at like dismantling some of that shame and anxiety around classical music, but we are making so many little steps in the right direction. I think it's great to recognize them. And, educating the next generation is such an important part of it as well. I think going back to your experience over the last year doing that, I think it's inspiring to see the next generation creating music and getting excited about it. And it's so fun to see.
Yeah, I find it really rewarding and really encouraging. And there's some amazing conversations being had in the industry, some amazing leaders putting together great research, great ideas, strategies, a lot of success stories. And, I don't know, I'm very hopeful, but like to reiterate, I guess, if classical music, as it's kind of stereotyped as, if that dies, I am more than happy with that. That is okay. If that's the you have to be a certain age, a certain gender, a certain race, a certain economic position. You have to wear a certain thing, and you have to know when to clap after the pieces, and you have to rub elbows with all the high-end donors at the event, and you have to know how the music is going to make you feel. Like,
Yeah.
as if...
It's giving aristocracy, which is just not the vibe we're looking for.
Yeah. And I mean... Yeah, so I'm perfectly happy if that dies, honestly. And, like, what's being performed nowadays and presented, just the diversity that we're seeing, even going back to my own experience. I'm halfway through this festival, and, you know, we had a concert. Our opening concert was Italian Baroque music being sung, paired with, like, Hindustani jazz. With this singer who is from North India, and they're super cool. But being paired with a guy from the UK who comes and sings and specializes in, you know, this Baroque music, and just like this meeting of cultures and ideas, and how the two styles of singing are different and similar. Like, that is what I want to see going forward. Like that rich meeting of cultures and diversity, and kind of just like, it's like bringing in new stories to classical music, and new, not just new sounds, but just new, I don't know, making it better reflect the world around us.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I feel like we could keep talking. We keep going, almost not in circles, but I feel like a spiral that just keeps going, and we could keep talking about this all. But I wanted to thank you, Adele, so much for having this conversation.
Of course.
It's inspiring to know that there's a lot of young musicians out there who are really keen to innovate and do great things. And hopefully we can see more of it happen. And I'm not rooting for classical music's death, but I am accepting it, and like a phoenix from the ashes, come back up.
Exactly. It's a phoenix. That's like, I was thinking that earlier, and I was like, oh, that's a little cliche, but it's an evolution. It's a transformation, and it's a really exciting time to be in the industry. Both as, you know, someone who's working with the audiences, and also working with like the next generation of performers and thinkers and administrators. Yeah, it's an exciting time. And I'm like really fortunate to witness these changes and be a small part of them and contribute to the discussion. And it's always so great talking to you about classical music as someone who also gets it, and has such a deep love for it as well. So thank you.
It's amazing to see that like the innovation, the struggles and the innovations are like the same across the world. I think sometimes it feels very isolated doing, you know, here in Australia looking at the same thing, or, you know, in other parts of the world just going, oh, you know, I just wish it would change this way.
Yeah.
So it's been amazing. Look, Adele, where do you want to be found on the internet?
You can follow me. Well, oh my God, I almost said you can follow me on LinkedIn. I have been spending, oh my God, I've been spending a lot of time on LinkedIn. Yikes. Yeah, I'm trying to think where you can follow me on LinkedIn, I guess. That's probably where I talk about most of this sort of like culture shift in classical music the most. I'm not really active on any other social media much anymore. I'll probably revive my blog, so you can find that on LinkedIn if I ever revive it and start posting some of the thoughts that I have around this kind of topic.
It's so hard to find the time to write.
I know. I keep saying like, oh, like now I have all these like interesting articles I want to write, but it's like, my God, I have no time.
I had my therapist say, "Oh, have you tried journaling?" And I was like,
I don't have time to journal.
Too much like work.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I write for a living. Like I'm not gonna go home and write some more. Yeah. Wow, that's the first time I've ever plugged my LinkedIn on podcasts. It's kind of horrifying. Oh my God! But
this is how you know we've become professionals.
I know. There's some interesting articles and stuff that's being shared there. Or in the Discord server, honestly, that's probably the better place to find me as well.
Go and check it out. There's a lot of fun things that go on, you know, everything from, you know, Harry Potter brackets to, you know, conversations about the Olympics. and our general just like excitement over the silliest things.
Yeah,
it's so nice to like.
It's a good place.
Yeah, I turned off my notifications over a month ago, I think now, on Discord. And what it has changed is like the way I interact with it. I now like jump on and it's like a massive treat. Someone's dying. It's like this massive treat where I can go through and just catch up on everything. It does mean that I often reply to messages like 24 hours late, and then Tina's just like, look, Sam's here again.
Yeah. Well, I left and then I came back and then I came back again because now I have more time and I'm spending less time on the other social medias. But yeah, the Discord is great. Is there anything that you've been reading, watching, listening to that you wanted to plug? I have been listening to on repeat the album Brat by Charlie XCX. It's Brat Summer, y'all. It's Brat Summer. Hyperpop realness. It's epic. It's amazing. And that is going to be my plug. Yeah.
It's actually just really fun music. I haven't listened to the whole album. I've been particularly slack. I do want to blame artists for releasing so much good music all at once this year. We could have spread it out over 2 or 3 years. I worry about what our music scene next year is going to look like. But still, Brat has been great. I've been really enjoying Chapel Roan.
Oh, yes.
The Rise and Fall of the Midwest Princess.
So good.
It's just...
so good.
And then, even then, like, going back further earlier in the year, Cowboy Carter just hit for me. The album listening experience, I felt like I needed to be like sat in a concert hall to listen to that. Like, it was just
I love that.
But then also wanted to be up and dancing. You know, Yaya comes on and I'm like, I'm like running around the house.
Ready to go.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you again so much, Adele, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm sure we'll do this at another time.
Probably, to be continued.
Conversation paused. Content and Capable was recorded, edited and produced by Samuel O'Brien. You can follow the podcast at Content, the letter N, Capable on Instagram, and you can find it on Facebook. You can also send an email through to contentandcapablepod@gmail.com with any of your thoughts, queries or concerns. The best way to support the podcast is to leave a review on your preferred podcatcher so more people can hear the podcast. The art was done by Opia, and the music was written, edited, and produced by Jason Hilton. Content and Capable is proud to be a part of the Deus Ex Media Network, where you can find a podcast for any of your nerdy interests.
Do you love to be super scared? Do you enjoy listening to hilarious hot takes on timeless classics? Well, fear not, listeners. I'm here. Welcome to the Super Scary Podcast, where we cover everything from the supernatural to the superpowered. I'm your host, Josh, a scaredy cat nerd who enjoys superhero, sci-fi, and horror movies way too much. Whether I'm processing my trauma from Texas Chainsaw Massacre or reminiscing on the nostalgia of Hocus Pocus, my guests and I have a hilarious time going through our favorite and sometimes not so favorite moments. I'm your friend till the end, listeners, because everyone's entitled to one super scary podcast. We post weekly episodes on Mondays, and you can find us at Super Scary Podcast on all the socials. See you in the afterlife, listeners.
Thank you for listening to Content and Capable. Don't forget to rate and review, and we'll see you next week for another episode.
Deus Ex Media.